On this episode of Carnage, we're dynoing our 1.5 JZ. And here we are with our 1.5 JZ. Let's face it, it's a 2 JZ with a 1 JZ head. It's still a 3 litre bottom end, and we're going to see what it makes on the dyno today. So obviously this is one of our little Carnage Garage throw together deals, but as someone pointed out to me the other day, I put a fair bit of detail and care into my throw together deals, probably more than some people do in their proper builds. But anyway, so we started with a 2 JZ NA block. We've got 2 JZ turbo rods and pistons in it. We've done the ring gaps, we've done rod bolts, we've done head studs. We've got main studs in it as well. We've got the 1 JZ head in it. So it's set up with shimless buckets. It's got Kelfer cams. I think there's 272, 278. And yeah, we're gonna run her up on the dyno today and see if we can make it to 500 rear wheel kilowatts. That would be my goal. But as we've seen before here on the dyno cell, having goals and what is reality are sometimes very different things. So obviously we're at max performance. Zane's going to run it up. We're going to have to sort of do a little bit of bedding in first and then run it up and see what sort of power it makes. And before we forget, last episode on Carnage, you would have noticed that the oil pressure on this engine when we fired it up was quite high, like 130 PSI at idle sort of high, which is a lot of oil pressure. And we worked out what it was, that, you know, we bought the wrong oil pump for the car. Like we'd gone to Golby's and gone, give us the best one, you know, all the pressure. And they gave us the turbo pump, which is set up for oil squirters, which we don't have, you know, because oil squirters obviously use up a lot of oil pressure. We don't have oil squirters, and therefore we had too much oil pressure. So basically I had to pull the whole front end off the motor and remove the little shim out of the oil pump, put it back together, and all is right with the world. At cold, oil pressure is about 100 PSI at idle, which is still pretty high, but when it's actually got some temp in it, it's about 50 to 60 PSI at idle, which is totally fine. So now that that answer is answered, let's move on to the power. So we're just going to start off with like gate pressure and just some bedding in basically, so don't expect anything big to start off with. So basically right now he's just tipping more fuel in it because every time he gets onto it, it goes good for a bit and then leans out. So he's just going through the curve, putting more and more fuel along into the curve. This thing should be pretty healthy, I think. It's just ridiculous how much power it's making and it's not even full into it yet. I mean, when we first brought this car down here, back when we first got the 1 JZ going, it was flat out making that much power. Seriously. I know, he's giving me the look.
Fuel, what have we got?
Sorry?
Did we change fuel pressure or anything?
No. Why?
down at 1 pump or something?
Don't think so. Why you think we're...
I'm adding heads and heads and heads and stuff having it at 12.
So I can get some fresh fuel.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go get some fresh E85. So Zane had some concerns about the fuel based off the air-fuel ratios, and once we had a look at it, we realised that, yeah, last time I'd had fresh fuel was 7 months ago. 7 months. So we drained 40 litres of bad E85 out of it, put 40 litres of fresh E85 into it, and now we'll run it up again and see if that fixes it. Probably should. Anyway, let's see what it makes now. At 20 psi. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome.
Fuel, I think it's a lot better now.
Yeah. It's almost 600 horsepower at the tyres at 25 pounds of boost. This has never done that's the highest figure it's ever done. Only at 25. Usually we're at 28. So I think last time we had it on the dyno at 28 psi it made 422 rear wheel kilowatts or 566 horsepower. But yeah. UPP! Wow, 628 horsepower. Yes! 650 horsepower at the tyres, 487 kilowatts. We are with a B-stick of 500 kilowatts. That is at 30 psi. That is awesome. Well, we're going to call it there for the day because we're out of map sensor, right? So you see it's coming up here on the boost curve, 29, 29, 29, just nudges 30, 30, and the limit of the factory map sensor in the Haltech ECU is like 29 psi. So we could put an external map sensor in it, sure, but you know, returning, all that sort of stuff. Let's take it to the track as is, run it as is. As you can see, it goes a little bit rich at the end when it just, yeah, hits that map sensor pretty hard and just tips in a bit more fuel. But man, good numbers. I mean, 488 kilowatts at the tyres, 650 horsepower at the tyres. That is not too bad at all. I mean, this is a motor that we have just thrown together in the Carnage workshop. It's making real good numbers on stock rods, stock crank. Yeah, this thing's going 950s or better on the quarter, and you're going to see that on a future episode of Carnage.